Alrighty, welcome to the Excitable Soul Podcast. Here we are interested in all things purpose. We want to know where and how people find meaning and connection in their lives. In every episode, we're going to be hearing the real life stories of how people have uncovered, understood, and unleashed their own unique sense of purpose. Our hope is that we can all learn from the stories and the journeys of our guests so that we can better find a sense of purpose in our own lives. I'm host James Glover, performance coach and purpose nerd. I'm incredibly excited to be exploring these stories with you. So let's get going, shall we? Welcome back, everybody. Today, my guest is Kurt Lindley. Kurt describes himself as a South African-born, Yorkshire-bred, self-indulgent procrastinator who puts family first, everything else second. He's a hopeless dreamer, thinker, poet, and incredibly curious learner. As this intro suggests, Kurt is cut from a different cloth, and it's one that we all could do with a piece of. His deeply insightful view of the world is compelling, and this conversation is the same. Enjoy. Welcome, Kurt, to the Excitable Soul Podcast. Amazing, mate. Absolutely amazing to have you here. How are you feeling?
It's a really weird question because you always think that should be just a simple answer of, I'm feeling good. But you're like often feeling many things. So I'm feeling energized because we get a chance to have this conversation, which has probably been like years in the waiting.
Yeah.
I'm privileged to be on this platform with you.
Well, amazing. And I love the fact that you've already started with, I'm not feeling one thing, I'm feeling a whole load of things. We should probably just bring our audience into the kind of the brilliance of the conversation we just had about what's happening for you later on and your need to be able to perfect braids.
It's a YouTube sensation that I'll be looking at various ways to ensure I can put a bobble in and a plait in a 10-year-old's hair and create some sort of, crazy installation on her head in preparation for a dance show.
So, ladies and gents, you are on a podcast that's talking about meaning, purpose, and connection, and it doesn't get any more significant than that. Like, getting the hair right is critical. That is today's top job.
That is reality.
Yeah, so my friend, we kind of create this structure on this program, and I have absolutely no doubt that structure is going to get thrown out of the window by you in the course of our conversation, and that we're basically going into the unknown, the two of us. So Lord help anybody that's listening, because who knows where we may end up. But the way in which we always kind of kick off the conversation really is by talking to people about the kind of the process of discovery and uncovering a sense of purpose. You know, where do we find meaning and connection in our lives? And, you know, just some of the kind of the moments of reflecting back on your journey and thinking about what are the experiences that have shaped who I am in the world. And I know it's a big question, but where would you dive in on that one?
Well, we did talk a little bit before the call, and I want to kind of illustrate this to listeners. Like, I want this conversation to be as authentic and as unscripted, but like full version of who I am during this. So I'm not trying to say anything for any particular purpose other than I'm feeling it at that point in time.
Yeah, nice.
But when you say pick a moment where things changed, I really kind of thought hard about that in advance, and I'm like, there isn't one moment. Like, my life is a series of many moments, and every day has many moments in it. So I could pick out, large critical incidents that occurred, like, the loss of a father, or, loss of my wife and things like that, where people would go, wow. And I'm not undervaluing or undermining what those were, but they are moments in my life and they inform who I am.
Yeah.
But one starting point I will take us to is actually, 2017, and finding myself on a trip to South Africa, where I needed to go to sense check my world and be with my family and be cared for. And I spent 16 hours on 2 flights, 8 hours from the UK to Dubai, and then 8 hours from Dubai into South Africa, with my daughter. I think she was about 2.5, 3 at the time. She slept most of the way, and I spent most of that trip watching every TED Talk, YouTube clip, video, anything that talked about purpose or value or ikigai or where the happiest places in the world, blue zones,
Yes.
even a town in India called Orenville, where people live this kind of like life of sharing prosperity, and they're
Yeah.
all on similar incomes, and they all invest in each other. And I thought I would find the answer, the purpose. Thought I would find it in all of this, and the
Yeah.
reality was I didn't. What
Yes.
I
Yeah.
found was lots of people navigating a journey and trying to, sometimes for their own sort of value, sharing a way to do it, and sometimes for financial gain. Watch
Yeah.
this, buy my book, and
Yeah.
you'll find your purpose. So I landed on, in terms of like purpose, is it changes,
Yeah.
it evolves, and the one thing of the origin, if you've ever kind of looked at Ikigai, which is this Okinawan approach to kind of understanding purpose in life, you ask questions like, what can I do that's of value to the world? What can I do
Yeah.
that I enjoy doing, and what can I get paid for, and those sorts of things. That's been kind of modernized into a Western society, and it doesn't. For me, I don't think it works. I don't think
No.
it matches. But if you look at its origin, it talks about how people are born into this lifestyle in Okinawa where their purpose changes. Like, let's easiest way to say is decade on decade. So like,
Yeah.
10 to 15-year-old, you might be helping your parents on your farm something. But in your 20s, you are now the leader of that kind of farming experience. But then when you're in 60s and 70s, you might be the carers of young children. And
Yeah.
you stay as a kind of like a community, a pod.
Yeah.
So when I think about purpose, I'm like, this is what my purpose is right now, and I'm acknowledging that it will change. And the only thing I really land on is be of value,
Yeah.
and that's it.
And you know what? I automatically like the goosebumps on my arms, right? I like they're up, mate. They're up, and part of the reason why they're up is having having done the kind of the research, having done the similar work of like what else is out there, what else are people saying? Like the whole principle of ikigai actually. It feels more like a how than a why. So it's almost kind of trying to give some guiding principles of if you want to live a life that feels of value, here's some things to think about. But it doesn't really talk about the underlying mechanisms of what purpose really is. And I think that's a fairly significant misunderstanding because you can go in entirely the wrong direction. And what you've just said actually feels really significant to me in that it's about contribution,
Mm.
but it's about what's the unique contribution that I am trying to make. And that can be big or small, but it's about contribution. It's contribution to something that's over and above your own self-interest. It's about contribution to something that is meaningful and significant to you, but has consequence to the world beyond you. And I totally agree with you that sense of purpose can evolve over time. But the one thing that we can almost rely upon is that there are some just underpinning founding ideals. And these aren't values, they're founding ideals. They're threads, if you like, in the experiences that we've had that shape what that unique contribution really looks like. And the fact that you immediately went there, I've done this, I've looked at that, I'm trying to find the answer. I couldn't, but here's where I've got to, which is the freaking answer. I just want to be of value. I want to contribute.
I, I had this conversation with my partner last night because we were talking about being of value, and she kept like illustrating this need that you're making a difference. And I was like, we have to be really careful with that language about making a difference because it might drive us to think we have to make a big difference,
Yeah.
noticed by the world. We
Yeah.
have to be like, Pulitzer Prize winning. We have to be climbing Everest or what have you. And I said, I just want to make a difference in the world around me. So whether that's to our family, our
Yeah.
children, whether that's to our parents, whether that's to our clients that we work with.
Yeah.
Um, so the unique difference is you. You're the unique piece.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to be unique. You already are. And the contribution is it's the contribution to others' well-being, others' life, others' way of being. And I wake up every morning and I ask myself a very simple question: how can I be more today?
Yeah.
It's a little bit cheesy. It is the brand name of the organization that I created, but it was one of those. I needed something to start every morning with,
Yeah.
and I thought about like Nike have Just Do It, and I was like, I need something very similar.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
mine was to say, how can I be more today?
Yeah.
But I didn't put like huge kind of like aspirations on that. I put
Yeah.
a level of, well, that might just be when my daughter walks in the room in the morning to smile,
Yeah.
because yesterday I didn't.
Yeah.
That might be to sit and have breakfast with my daughter because I didn't yesterday. I was already doing work or something like that. So it could be very simple in terms of being more and contributing. You don't need to climb Everest, which, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing. You can do that and raise money doing it, but you don't have to hold yourself accountable to these huge things.
Yes, totally agree. Love it. Love it. And I'm immediately curious, and I know the people that will be listening are curious of like, how do you maintain a sense of connection to that? Like, it's one thing, anybody could turn around and go, oh, yeah, I'm going to be more today, but you have internalized it in a way that, you know, fundamentally drives your behavior on a day-to-day basis. What was that process like for you?
Well, getting to it was getting to have that thing was probably the hardest, which was, I think I was just coasting through the world. And people around me were having to be more simply to survive, you know, whether it was they needed to, deal with the after effects of medication to support them just get through a day. And I had a bad back because I didn't sleep well. Like, so, you know, the process of realizing that I was coasting through life was probably the hardest bit, which led to the question I now ask myself: how do I be more today? And then in terms of like holding myself accountable on a good day, I don't have to hold myself accountable. It just happens. You know, I believe in it. It's like,
Yeah.
be good, do good, and good will happen. And that generally is the process of a day. On a
Yeah.
bad day, like when I'm not feeling great, and I have suffered with bouts of depression and maybe live with depression throughout my life,
Yeah.
I have to kind of remind myself that it might take a bit more effort to be what I need to be today for somebody else. And I have to appreciate where that comes from.
Yeah.
Or after that, I need to give myself space to rest and not feel
Yes.
guilty about it, because, you know, I do also live in guilt and shame as a consequence of other things.
Yeah.
Uh, but equally, it hasn't worked so well this last week because I had a couple of days where it hasn't been amazing. But
Yeah.
I give myself generally like a 24-hour period. I'll go, right, if you're going to have a bad day, it is a bad day. 24 hours you've got,
Yeah.
sulk the hell out of it, and really embrace the sulk, really embrace the nature of not feeling great. And then tomorrow, start again.
Yeah.
And that generally does help me.
Yeah. Amazing. Embrace the sulk. And it's interesting that, and I might just be hearing what I want to hear here. So I'm going to just kind of sense check it with you. But in a couple of the other conversations that we've had on this podcast, people have really talked about the importance of giving themselves permission. So, you know, I'm hearing you again talking about this idea of actually, you know what, I'm not going to beat myself up here for how I feel. I'm just going to give myself permission to feel it, but I am going to put boundaries around it. I'm not going to allow it just to continue to play out. I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to give it the space that it needs, but I'm also going to say, and at this point, that's it. We need to move on to something different.
Yeah, it is kind of that. But like I'd say, again, I listened to your podcast that you did with your sister. I thought it was fascinating. It really made me think deeply about my own kind of journeys and stuff like that. And I listened to the questions, and you guys quite eloquently came up with really good answers that you're responding to. And I was like, I don't think I have one answer for any question. So I beat myself up terribly sometimes, and I have to then I'm not in a position to give myself forgiveness. So
Yeah.
I reach out to the family around me and tell them about what I'm feeling, and they give me the permission for forgiveness. Like I have
Yeah.
to source that external agent, that validation.
Yes.
Like this morning with my daughter, like she wasn't happy about something, and I still don't know what it was. And she's very, very eloquent with her thoughts. Like, you know, we've had a debate before where my daughter said, "You don't know what's going on in my head." She's 10 years old.
Jen.
She was 9 when she said it. And I'm like, right, I can't pretend that this external thing I've observed is the reason why she's upset. There's a whole
Yeah.
set of internal processes going on that I don't understand. And I didn't understand them this morning. So I came downstairs, my partner was here, and she said, "It's not your fault." And I was just like, but you feel it is.
Yeah.
Like, you feel the weight of the parenting and the responsibility. And she just said, "It's not your fault." And that
Yeah.
was enough for me to go, okay, I can stop beating myself up. So sometimes I need someone else to help me stop beating myself up. And other times, no, I have to call it and go, you need to crack on. There's business that needs to be done. There's people that need you to be present.
Yeah.
You need to step into this. So yeah.
And how do you it feels to me like you've just kind of walked over something and made it sound like it was as simple as, kind of boiling an egg, which is the kind of the differentiation between knowing when you can do it for yourself and when you need to reach out, and the willingness to be able to reach out. Like, how do you figure that out? Like, how do you know which you need and when? And at what point did you become skillful enough, and skillful is probably the wrong word, feel safe enough to be able to reach out to the people around you to just go, oh, I'm not getting myself out of this?
Oh, mate. Again, multiple points. I remember being at university and really struggling. I didn't know at the time that it was depression. I remember getting really, really drunk. And we went into the nightclub. It was just on campus where we were, and it was terrible music, and I couldn't cope. So I came out and I made a sign and I put it on my door, and it was like, if you want to listen to good music, come here. And I stood on Stone Roses and I had it blaring loud, and I just sat there rocking away, like dancing away in my room on my own. I was like, if I reflect back, that's the first point at which I was like, that was me experiencing something that I couldn't understand. I couldn't rationalize. I couldn't work out. And the way to do it was through alcohol, which is not a good way to do things, which I have since learned.
Yeah.
But if you kind of like look at events like that through your life, you'll go, there's a point at which that it's dangerous to go the other edge.
Yeah.
Like I now know when things are at a point that I need an external agent. And what I'll do is I'll often say, I don't need you to do anything. I just need you to know this is where I'm at. And that's
Yeah.
enough, because what we have is really, really caring and helpful people around us. And
Yeah.
what they don't want is for us to be upset. And what they try to do is help solve the problem or make things easier. And that can be worse sometimes, because it
Yeah.
takes a responsibility away from us, or it stops us from feeling the thing. And if you look at psychology and suppression versus reappraisal and expression, we know that suppression is bad and reappraisal and expression is really healthy. So I would prefer to express my pain if I have it, or my doubt, or my depression, or whatever it is, because I know that there's almost like a euphoric moment that comes after it. It's like,
Yeah.
I got a friend who's really religious, and he lives in Australia now. We barely talk, but if I'm really struggling, I'll send him a message about it. And he's the only person that will accept this return response from. Anybody else says this to me, I will not respond very well. So I know who to ask for what help and when.
Yeah.
He responds with, "This too will pass."
Yes.
That's it. Like, and it's like, right, I can take it from him. I can't take it from anybody else. So again, there isn't one answer to any of these situations. It's just knowing what do I need at that point in time to allow me to be the best I can be, which might not be amazing. It's just the best I can be
Yeah.
for those around me and for myself.
Yeah. And I love the really subtle language that you used a minute ago is, I now understand. Right? I now understand. There's
Mm.
something in being able to build that awareness and that insight into these kind of moments and these choices and what works and what doesn't. But you said something right at the very beginning, and I'm kind of want to loop. It feels like there's a connection between what you're sharing and where you started at the beginning, which is the everyday moments that create meaning for you. So I ask this walloping big question of people when they kindly agree to come on to this podcast of, what are these moments that have defined who you are? And you went, yeah, there have been plenty of those, but actually there are plenty of everyday moments too. So I'm hearing you talk about, I now understand, and I'm hearing you talk about, there are everyday moments where I find meaning and connection. How do you identify? How do you see? How do you know? How have you been able to pay attention to where the everyday moments are?
So we have talked about the fact that I have dyslexia, and that might be part of this. My partner also is autistic and has ADHD, and we met a couple of years ago. So we've only been together about 3 years. And when we first met, it took a little while, but she then had the confidence to share with me. She felt the way that I operated might suggest that I have autistic or ADHD tendencies. So when you say, how do I pay attention to all these things, I don't know if I can't pay attention to these things.
Okay.
They are just present in everything that I do. And my challenge then is to filter or distill or try and sift out, because there's almost too much stimuli.
Yes.
If I'm not careful, I'll become overwhelmed by just every day.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so I've what's different between me and my partner is that I have found so many coping strategies that allow me to successfully get through a day and work well and build a business and make some money as a consequence and all that. Whereas she's still on her journey and
Yeah.
working out those strategies. And it's really interesting watching how both of us approach the same challenge
Yeah.
and might have a different set of coping strategies. So I don't know if I can't notice. So what I try to do is what can this teach me? That is the
Yeah.
question. When it occurs, what is this giving me?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm missing something that might be extremely valuable in that day.
Yeah. And this concept of kind of like filtering, but also just that comment of I could become overwhelmed. It just makes me think of noise, like white noise, like kind of happening. And how do you quieten the white noise, or how do you filter out the white noise? And I can imagine that there are plenty of people who are listening to this going, well, I'm feeling like there is a kind of a bombardment, whether or not that's something that I've instigated unwillingly in my life in terms of, kind of habits and behaviors in certain interactions, or whether or not that's just something that's unconscious, or, may have come from, come from anywhere. That there's an active engagement there for you of saying, because of some of the stuff that I have going on for me, I actually need to pay attention in a different way and kind of change the channel a little bit. Like, how have you learned to do that? What are some of the coping strategies that you've created in order to be able to do that?
So we've got to appreciate I didn't know that I was creating coping strategies as a
Yeah.
consequence of dyslexia or anything else that I may have that I'm undiagnosed about. I just was getting through life.
Yeah.
For a long time, I was just trying to find a way to navigate life in a healthy and safe manner. There was a period of time in the early 2015 where maybe 14, 15, where I felt very apathetic about life. Like there was
Yeah.
no high or low.
Yeah.
Um, and it was because there was just so much that I was paying attention to. I didn't know what was the right sort of stuff to pay attention to. So I started to create my own life hacks that, again, helped me navigate stuff, whether it was training or whether it was work or whether it was, whatever it was. So it's only now in the last couple of years, having met my partner, that I understand all of those things that we're putting in place are coping strategies for the way that my brain operates.
Yeah.
So my diary is like, without it, I can't function. So my diary is blocked out hour by hour. But even
Yeah.
to the point that I block out time for a break, time for lunch, I'll look at it over the week and go, if that looks like a really busy week, where am I having a half day? Or
Yeah.
where am I putting a run in? Where am I taking time for a walk? So I have to plan in that decompression time,
Yes.
be the best. So there's no point working 8 or 10 or 12 hours if you're not being the best. It's better to work 4 hours and be the best, and then you'll have a more productive thing. So I have little lists. I don't have a technology piece for that. I have these little squares of scrap paper that I have on the kitchen counter that are a list of things that need to be done in that particular day. And
Yeah.
that is a way to navigate the day. Everything goes in a plastic wallet. Anything that's important, it gets printed off, and I write all over it. And it goes in a plastic wallet, and it goes on the side near my desk. So there are just multiple strategies layered on top of each other to allow me to navigate like things. It's to other people, it's overwhelming, but to
Yeah.
me, it helps me from being overwhelmed.
Yeah. Do you know what? The real beauty of this, Kurt, and you started by talking about wanting to be kind of really authentic in the conversation, is it is exactly that. It's about you've been able to start very, very quickly by going, I look for and find meaning in contribution. Like that's what really matters to me. And how do I do that? And then really quickly we're kind of like peeling away the layers and being able to go, well, the practicalities of being able to try and make a contribution in all the different ways of my life have have meant that I have either consciously or unconsciously just had to figure out ways of trying to healthily take the journey of life to some degree, and actually in moments of reflection starting to notice, what do I really need in order to be able to do that, whether that's within me or whether that's from other people, or whether or not it's just scaffolding that I put around my week or my time in order to be able to function in the way that I know I need to function. And for me, this is a kind of really beautiful illustration for those that are listening around the practicality of being able to go, yeah, I find meaning here. And there is the kind of the emotional conviction and connection to something that is about service beyond myself. But here's what the reality of that looks like on a day-to-day basis. And here's the reality of a journey and being able to make that a reality in my life on a day-to-day basis.
It's I think it's important to show that line of sight, because we could talk philosophically, we could talk here, really deep about meaning and stuff like that. Like, I've been spending sort of probably about the last year on a philosophical kind of journey, once a month, being on a kind of like a course that's helped me better understand what 1800s or 1700s or 1600s or even earlier philosophy would mean in the 19 and 2000s.
Yeah.
How we translate that, and that's great, but it sometimes comes down to like simple sentences, which is like, for me, it's about actually being selfish, but not at the expense of others.
Yeah.
So what that means is, if I can look after me, I can look after you better.
Yeah.
I'll put me first, so I can look after you. Now,
Yeah.
other people find that language really difficult, because
Yeah.
they're like, "What? You're putting yourself first?" Yeah, because if I'm always putting myself second, I cannot be what you need. I'm always going to be just a little bit less than what's required. And then I'm going to get frustrated, and you're going to get a poor service, whether it's a partner or a child or a client. And at some point, you're going to get frustrated. So what I'm saying is, no, this is me. This is what I need to do.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing it at the expense of our relationship. I'm doing it so we can give the most to it. And then I think in terms of like sort of practicalities, don't underestimate the power of every interaction.
Yeah.
Every interaction, whether it's the crossing lady on the way to school, whether it's a nod or a wave at somebody that you're walking past on the street, or whether it's a deep conversation with your partner, or a client conversation. And then that's takes me into the kind of business world in terms of the way I operate. I listened to a number of Simon Sinek talks before really distilling how the business model for Be More works. And one of the things that stood out to me about Simon Sinek in this particular speech was, only work with people that get you. And I was like, this is really interesting. And what he's trying to say is, if you work with somebody who's they've brought you in to do some work, but they don't get you, you'll spend most of your time convincing them rather than doing the actual work. And that was like straight away, that was saved my business like so much time and energy, that I now have very good conversations with clients in advance of signing any paperwork to make sure that they get me in the way I operate. And if they don't, I'll offer them an out to talk to somebody else or work with somebody else, or I'll give them a set of risks that they're buying into based on, if you are struggling with the way that we operate and this doesn't work for you, and we start to do more of what you're desiring rather than what I believe is right, here's these risks that you need to sign up to.
Yeah.
They're not what we would suggest as the approach to take.
Yeah.
So that's really helped. So I could probably list, out of the 100 clients that I might have, let's say 70 to 80 of them are more than clients now, and are trusted advisors, and we are reciprocal mentors, and we are supporters of each other in multiple ways, because I've gone, this is right for me, or it isn't right for me, or this is the way to operate, and this is the risk associated, or this is, and it's just making sure that I know it's a moral trade. Like, moral trading is what is the lifeblood of operating, I think.
Yeah, love that. And I really love the kind of the comment around, don't underestimate the significance of every interaction. And that's personally powerful to me, because of the two of us and the relationship that we formed, in that we were in an environment where we had to share something that was significant. And I talked a little bit about Christopher Reeve and Superman, and a black and white photo that is still on my wall here. Actually, I look at it every day, and the fact that I kind of received it when I was 7, and on the back was written these words from Superman about the fact that I'd been a good boy, and that I'd been looking after my mum and my brother. Like, I was so young, my sister wasn't even mentioned in it, and that he was going to have a word with his friend Father Christmas and see what he could do, and keep it. And I was freaking 15 before I realized it was my dad's handwriting, and then was completely devastated. But when I shared this, you then came up to me not long after, and you took off your wedding ring and you showed me what was inside, which was the kind of the embossed Superman symbol. And I was with my partner, who is now my wife, and I came back and I just gushed over that I just gushed over the beauty and the simplicity, but the significance of this marking. And she remembered, and when we then got married, I had the wedding rings, and I hadn't realized that, a few days before, she'd robbed the wedding rings, and that she went and got mine embossed with the Superman symbol. And then just the universe doing its thing, we then saw each other probably another 5 years after I'd got married. So we're probably talking, I don't know, 8 years maybe in between those interactions at a like a conference, trade show, thousands of people. We see each other, didn't even know we're both gonna be there, and I'm like, Kurt, look, they didn't even talk about anything else. Just look, Kurt, look. And you were like, oh. So the simplicity of that interaction and the connection that then created between the two of us. And we don't speak regularly, we haven't connected in ages, but there's just something really magical, I believe, between us that's shared, that one tiny moment has fostered.
And that's that you just illustrated there. Like, and we need to be okay with that journey, in a sense of, I valued that interaction on so many levels. You think we were in a room of about 10 or 12 people, all sharing fairly deep and meaningful stories that still, stay with me, some of those stories. But how many of the people in that room, if we saw across a busy conference floor, would we embrace after 5 years or 8 years of not seeing each other? And we did. So that's the thing about, like, don't underestimate every interaction, because in that interaction, there might be a lesson that comes later. So you at the time were working for the energy project.
Yeah.
And I'd stumbled across it at the same time through a different avenue. And I really used that methodology, or that idea of following your energy, to operate what at the time was a really challenging part of my life, which was to work following your energy. So I didn't use the maths that was created within the work that you were doing. But had I not noticed you, had I not noticed that, I might not have leaned into this way of operating. So what you might not know, and this is interaction with me or interaction with many other people, is you might still be teaching them the lessons when you're gone.
Yeah.
And those lessons might come a lot later, and then they might be so helpful. And if they never see you, they never get to tell you. But I would say, actually, there was some sort of like unintentional connection over some of that stuff, where I managed to do really well out of a really difficult situation because I managed to follow my energy. And it might be simply because I met you at that point in time.
Yeah.
You popped up talking about the energy project, and the energy stuff kind of really met my needs at that point in time. It was a phase in my life where I needed that.
Yeah.
And then suddenly we're here again together connecting. And it's like, there could have been someone you met yesterday, or the last person you talked to will be important to you at a different point in time, or you will be important to them at a different point in time.
Yeah. Yeah. Love. I genuinely am feeling pretty emotional right now. I just want to kind of call that out. Like I feel gratitude, deep sense of gratitude, of love, really, that we're able to kind of just openly share the impact of those kind of experiences and the significance of them, but also be able to acknowledge and hold that we don't live in each other's pockets.
Yeah,
and so you can have that depth of experience and it not be based on frequency of interaction, because it matters, because it's meaningful.
So sometimes we feel guilty, don't we? Because we haven't connected with somebody for a long period of time. And I'm like, no, I don't want to feel guilty. I have this conversation with my partner. She finds it strange that I have lots of people I call a friend that I might have seen once in 5 years. And I'll be like, well, I think they are my friend because of the depth of the connection. Like, we don't know each other's birthdays, but we know each other like deeper.
Yeah.
And that's really important for me to live in knowing that that's okay.
Yeah.
And not feeling guilt that I haven't like remembered your kid's birthday, or like, what your surname is.
Their name. I'm a shocker with names, right? So I'm really lucky. I've got a very, very close circle of friends, and I've got to be honest, everybody's had children. I definitely don't know their birthdays, and I do know their names, but I'm also dyslexic. So if I'm kind of in the moment, I can forget their names. But I love these people. I love these people deeply, and I'm really. I'm really hoping that my lack of retention around the names of their children doesn't make them feel like I don't care about them, because I would literally walk in front of traffic for them or their children. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Go, sorry.
just while I kind of try and regain my composure a little bit, we've talked quite a bit about the kind of the uncovering of the kind of the meaning and connection, and we've talked a little bit about the kind of understanding of it to some degree. But there's a bit that always really lights me up in these conversations around the kind of unleashing a sense of purpose. That internal faith and belief in what is possible, the kind of the courage and the clarity to go into the unknown, and how people have experienced those moments, or are just able to think about what moments are potentially to come. And I wondered if there is something from your perspective there that kind of just feels true. Where have those moments where you've kind of gone with faith and belief into the unknown?
Before I talk, what I would say is that listeners, to remind them to go and listen to your first episode, Between the Conversation, You and Your Sister, because I think the two of you shared some great statements and quotes around this that really sat with me. And I was like, yeah, like I would wished I could have said those things. So I would definitely invite people to go back and listen to that, because it's good. It's good. It's good listening. And it's so natural. Like it's a tennis game that's really natural between the two of you. But when I was thinking like unleashing sounds like it was like held in.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I never was all of who I could be because I didn't know that I should be.
Yeah.
I remember starting out in career, let's say, and going. I had an interview, and somebody said, "Oh, what's your aspirations?" It was working at a leisure centre, and I said, "Oh, I want to be the best at this particular job, and then I want to move to that job, and then not that job. I just want to be the best in that job before I move to it."
Yeah.
And it was this kind of like I had this kind of free thinking of like, you just grow and move, and then I got a job where I felt that I was contained, almost like, yeah, we'd like you to play here in this field, Kurt, but it's this narrow, and you can only go this far. And at that point, I started to lose this sense of kind of like capability.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, because it was like over a 10 or 11 year period, that I was losing parts of who I possibly could be, and the conformity was gaining ground, and the ability to be forward thinking or identify different ways of doing things had got too much for me. So I had to deliberately step out of it. So I went and did a master's in psychology and found ways to kind of think differently. But I think a really significant moment in terms of this, and it is worth mentioning. So my late wife, when she passed away, I had to recreate what life was like. Now that was sort of 6 years ago now, but those first couple of months, I had to sort of say to myself, well, I need to get dressed. So that's number one, because I can't walk around like in my underwear or my pajamas, and I need to get my daughter up, and I need to feed her, and I need to get her to childcare or something. So there were some very rudimentary things that needed to be done. And then once those things were kind of like being done, it was like, well, what I don't want to do is die not being all of what I possibly could be.
Yeah.
But I still didn't know like who I was really. I'd lost who I was. I'd lost, well, maybe I never even really knew who I was, because I'd been masking for so long, or disguising, or being a chameleon, a social chameleon, whatever it was. So yeah, 2016, 2017, a real sort of like period of just going, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? So it took a while to ask myself like the why not question. And then, I got made redundant. Best thing that ever happened to me, because it was the process of being made redundant was, I'd gone for an interview for one of the jobs that was remaining. And not many people know this, but I got a phone call from the person that was going to share whether I got the job or not. And I didn't take the phone call because I needed to know what my answer was before I got theirs.
Yeah.
So I didn't take the call, and I went and did a gig. I was doing a training gig, and all the way through I was like, what do I want? Do I want the job or not? I need to make that decision before they tell me. And I realized that whilst it was a great job, it wasn't the job for me, and it was going to confine who I was. So I got the phone call and they said, "Oh, you haven't got the job." And I was like, "That's okay. However, we can offer you this." And I was like, "I don't want it." I was like, "You what?" I was like, "No, I'd rather be in the wilderness."
Yeah.
Why? Because when you're in the
Wow.
wilderness, you work it out. And people said to me, that must have been a real courageous thing or a leap of faith or like, wow, you're brave. And I was like, no, it was just the most sensible decision I've ever made. It
Yeah.
was it was the right decision. And then I just spent like the next period of time conjuring up what was possible. And it comes back to like, I'm not saying this is how everybody should operate or everybody should, but I don't necessarily believe in leaps of faith. I don't necessarily, if it's a leap of faith, I've probably got something wrong along the way. I should have made the gap smaller, so it's a step.
Yeah.
Um, so I have this kind of way of operating is to be good, do good, and good will happen. Now, to be good is I need to be good at my craft. I need to be good as a human. I need to do good. So I need to do good jobs with people, or I need to do good in the world. And those two things drive the third, which is good will happen.
Yeah.
So there will be people that will say nice things about you as a consequence of being good, both in terms of expertise or craft or in terms of kindness and generosity. And therefore, like this circle economy, it will come back round. Somebody will say something, that'll say something, that'll say something. And try and balance this between how this operates in business and how this operates in life is like, don't be a dick. I'm sorry for using that phraseology on your podcast, I have to beep it out. But if you can operate like that, then for me, there aren't necessarily leaps of faith. There are just things that make you feel uneasy because it's feels outside of what you've done before. But that doesn't mean you can't learn it, explore it, talk to people who've done it before, go and pay attention to people who are doing it now.
Yeah.
So by the time it arrives, so for example, myself and a colleague have potentially got a gig in Kenya in October, right? Working with people that English isn't a first or even second language. We're working with people that have got educational standards of varying degrees, and we're delivering a product around the science of teaching and learning. Right? Is that a leap of faith, or is that a faith in us?
Yeah.
And if we don't think we're capable, what do we do to make sure that we are capable? So it's only ever, what do I need to do to be what they need from me?
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. And like I am just smiling from the inside out here, Kurt, because um, uh, I knew that this conversation, and in this conversation, you would be able to bring an incredibly unique perspective. And the fact that you're just going, I don't believe in leaps of faith, because I'm like, oh wow, wicked. Like that's both confronting and liberating in equal measure for me, because actually I love the language of leap of faith. And it's made me sit here and go, why do I love the language of leap of faith? What does it actually mean to me? Because you've just been able to explain really beautifully what it means to you. And I think it boils down to two things. It's language that for me expresses both excitement and courage, right? So that's kind of why the terminology lives with me. But when you were describing like the understanding and the sense making that you have around that, what that kind of conjured in you, this idea of like grow and move, grow and move, grow and move, grow and move. It was just it kind of intuitively in you, like I'm going to grow and I'm going to move to something else. I'm going to grow and I'm going to move to something else. And there were moments where that felt like you were being shut down. But actually, what was your reaction to that? In the most severe way, you went, actually, when I think about the future, I don't want to die and not have really been able to understand what I was capable of, what contribution I could have made. And for me, that's where we are 100% aligned and on the same page, is that there's a kind of a past, present, future element to purpose for me, which is when you're connected to something that is really meaningful. What it enables you to do is kind of go into the future, imagine a future, and ask yourself questions about what does it take to make that future a reality, and then create a sense of not destination, it's not goal and outcome, it's just direction. How do I go after it? And the fact that you were able to ask yourself the question around, do I want this job or not? Because actually you were, what do I really want? What really matters to me? And how do I get more of that? no, going into the wilderness is fine. I don't need to have the destination. I'm happy to go into the unknown, because it's really clear to me that the alternative is not what really matters.
That's it. I always that's the word is the alternative. Like the alternative don't bear thinking about. You imagine going to work every day, not liking your job, working in what might be a toxic environment, or even just a place where just shaves a bit of you off every day.
Yes.
You get a good income, you've got a good salary, it's not far from home, so you don't drive far. That's not a reason to stay.
No.
Like, and I know it's hard for people to make a change because they've got commitments in terms of mortgages or, you know, lifestyles. A friend of mine recently sold his business, he's made millions. And he talked to me at this party we were at, and he's talked to me about a lifestyle prison. And he said, just be careful of the lifestyle prison. And I was like, well, what's this? And he's like, creating a life that requires this income.
Yeah.
And then you can't get away from it. And I was like, well, for me, that I don't necessarily have a lifestyle prison, because the business model, and it's had to evolve because now I'm in a relationship. I have a partner. Between us, we have 5 children, so it's not a cheap gig.
Yeah.
But the business model is very simple, though. It's like, can I pay the bills that need to be paid?
Yeah.
Can I, as a consequence of the work I do, be a better parent and partner? Can I walk my daughter to school? And can I afford one holiday a year that's like a good holiday?
Yeah.
You know, and then everything else is a bonus. You know, having clients that are aligned with you. So back to that kind of like leaps of faith. I really struggle as well to see beyond next week. Like I don't even know what's happening tomorrow until I look at my diary. So it's really, I don't know what the destination is. I just know that to serve this moment and the next few moments, this is the kind of like alterations that I need to make.
Yeah.
And the directional change that I need to put in place. And my partner's really good at helping me sort of look a bit further afield, because we need to do that. Otherwise, like, how are we going to actually bring our worlds together in a way that we want to without a plan? And like, oh yeah, we do need to actually do that. But you can't do this alone, and that's why having these people around you, these good people around you, can help you, because you can't. Don't pretend that you can do all this on your own.
Yeah. You know what, Kurt, that feels like a really great place for us to pause this conversation. That none of us can do this on our own. And I think that just some of the incredible insights that you've been able to share in this conversation, you know, actually there's meaning in every day. It's not just about the big things that really happen to us in any given moment. The kind of the sense of needing to be able to reach out and connect with other people, which we kind of talked about at the beginning of the conversation, and is where we've kind of closed the circle now. They're just the acknowledgement that there were moments of apathy. There was just too much happening, paying attention to too much. How do you kind of quiet the noise and see through all of that in a way to be able to move forward really purposefully? The kind of the sense of, I love this idea of be good, do good, and good things will happen. And in the middle of all of that, you are growing and moving. And I don't know why, but I'm thinking Muhammad Ali, and I'm seeing a bob and a kind of a weave playing out in that moment. Mate, it's been a just really incredible opportunity to have this conversation with you and just share these experiences and feel the sense of connection between the two of us again. So thank you for taking the time to come and be a part of the podcast.
No, it's absolutely value being asked. I think one final thing that I might say is anything that I've described or anything that I've talked about is just one way of doing things. It's not the way, and I wouldn't like impose it upon anybody to follow that path. But what I would suggest is there's plenty more podcasts that you're going to be doing, and there'll be people with lots more insights that are worth listening to. So listen to the broad spectrum and then choose one what works for you.
Amen. Brilliant. Thank you, my man.
Thank you.
Massive thank you for taking the time to listen to the Excitable Soul podcast. If you are interested in uncovering, understanding, and unleashing your sense of purpose, come and explore our purpose immersion programs at theexcitablesoul.com. We look forward to hearing from you there or being with you on our next episode. Have an incredible day.